We're back. We're in the large intestine. So we're almost through here. Of course, it starts at the ileum, ends at the anus, about 5 foot long. And a living person and such, you die, the muscles relax, you can pull more out of there. So four areas, four regions. The cecum. A cecum is a blind gut, one way in, one way out type deal. Then you have the colon, and the colon is in three parts: the ascending, the transverse, the descending, I lied, four parts, and then the sigmoid and such. And then we have a name everywhere it bends. We have a name for that. And then the last portion there of the colon is the rectum and all. And that is the kind of a canal, if you will, a muscular canal, if you will. And then you have the opening. The anus is the opening, just like the mouth is the opening, the anus is the opening as such. You do have sphincter muscles. A sphincter muscle is a circular muscle. Okay, and you have sphincter muscles along the way, and they will either contract or relax. So, but the chyme gets pushed through that migrating motility, gets pushed up against the ileocecal valve, and then when you put food in the stomach, the pyloric sphincter valve relaxes, the ileocecal valve relaxes, things move, and it pushes what's in the ileum right there into the cecum as such. Now, you can go up or you can go down. When you go down, you run into the appendix. They call it variform. That means worm-like, a variform appendix and such. You go up, you're into the large intestine. So the large intestine goes up. That would be the ascending, and then it bends at the liver. Now that's on your right side. You can call it the right colonic flexure, but it also is bending underneath the liver, so you can call it the hepatic flexure. You go across, transverse. Then you bend at the spleen, or you bend on the left side, so you can call it the left colonic flexure, or you can call it the splenic flexure. Then you go down, and then you have an S shape, that's the sigmoid, such, and then it terminates into the rectum. The rectum is about 8 inches and such, and then you have a small little area where it has the two sphincter muscles, the anal canal. So those two sphincters, the internal is involuntary, the external is voluntary. You can't control the internal, you can control the external. And when we do potty training with children, that's what we're training them to do. So what happens in the large intestine? Most of the chyme that is in there has been completely broken down. All the good stuff absorbed out of it, so very little will happen to that. But you will get some absorption, a little bit of more secretion and such. The muscularis, the muscle and such, you actually have three bands. You have the longitudinal, the circular, and then you have that other one, the taenia coli, and it's a white band, a white ribbon. Taenia, I think, means ribbon and such. And then that kind of gathers the colon into these pouches, and the pouches is known as a haustra, and it looks like these little puckered, it gives it a puckered appearance. Okay, so the valve, the ileocecal valve, it's shut. The chyme stays in the ileum. When you eat, you get a gastroileal reflex or ileogastric reflex, easier to say. You get a big peristaltic push, pushing the chyme from the ileum into the large intestine. Anything in the large intestine gets pushed around as well, so it all moves and such. So immediately after you eat, you get that reflex, a strong wave right there. And then the large intestine and such, when that gets into that, it'll start moving from pouch to pouch to pouch to pouch. That is the haustral churning. Peristalsis slows down. Sometimes you can get a big one right there, a big mass peristalsis and such when you put a lot of food in the stomach, and that'll be a gastrocolic reflex, a big push. And whatever in the colon, usually that sigmoid, the transverse sigmoid, gets moved into the rectum. Then it pushes against that internal sphincter, and then you have the urge to go to the bathroom. So the last part of the chemical digestion in the large intestine is under the bacteria. The bacteria take that. Any sugars that sneak through, like galactose, they get fermented. And when you ferment something, you're taking the glucose, taking the sugar, breaking it down, and a byproduct are acids, organic acids, and gas. And that makes your tummy hurt. So the acids will mess with your stomachs and just gives it a pain, like when a muscle, like you've overworked a muscle. And then the gas makes it all extend and distend out. and then that gives you that the pressure feeling right there. So any proteins that slip through, they get broken down as well and such. The bilirubin that comes through gets broken down into urobilinogen. The bacteria doing all this. You need them because when they do that, they also give us B vitamins. You need the B vitamins and such. B vitamins, especially for DNA synthesis, cell production. Vitamin K, you need the vitamin K because vitamin K helps you with blood clotting. So you need that as well. The chyme stays in your large intestine for 3 to 10 hours, where it is solidified by removing the water. Then you no longer call it chyme, you call it feces, and the feces and such is just mucosal cells, water, salts, bacteria, and then your undigested food. You want it to stay here as least amount of time as possible. You don't want it hanging out. So, other things in there that are absorbed in the large intestine are water, vitamins, you need those vitamins and such, and then your electrolytes, sodium, potassium, things like that. Of the water that enters, you absorb most of it with about 1 to 200 mils of it left. This is important, okay? You need to hydrate. So the act of defecation, pushing the feces out from the sigmoid to the rectum and such, so the rectum then gets distended, stretches, then that creates this reflex, which causes the longitudinal muscles of the rectum to shorten, which then pushes on the internal sphincter. It relaxes, it pushes on the external sphincter, and you got to poop. So you're an adult, you control that until you come to a more convenient time. Some of us wait too long. Remember, you don't want to hold on to this. This is waste. You got to get rid of it. So you're living at the house now. It's convenient. So now what your friend and mine, which helps all of this stuff move smooth, is your fiber. And fiber is plant. It's cellulose. It's the pectin, it's the ligand and such. So you find it in fruits, vegetables, and all. So the fiber can be soluble or insoluble. If it's insoluble, it doesn't dissolve in water. That's why the term insoluble. And then you find that in fruit and wheat and corn. It keeps things moving and all of that. You want things to move because that reduces your risk of colon cancer, reduces your risk of gallstones and such. So healthy diet. The soluble, beans, oats, barleys and such, prunes, apples, citrus fruits, that tends to help lower your cholesterol. It'll bind this stuff up, hold on to it so that you don't reabsorb it, and then it'll pass out in your feces. So, other things in there, broken down enzymes and such, breaking things down, and you're absorbing those things. So once it's all broken down and everything can be that, it moves into the blood or moves into the lymph. What gets absorbed, where things happen, mostly in the small intestine. A small amount, mostly liquids, are absorbed in the large intestine and the water-soluble sides of your vitamins and all. So you need fat in your diet for fat solubles vitamins. You need water for water-soluble vitamins. So your carbohydrates, real quickly, broken down into monosaccharides, absorbed into the capillaries, travels through the liver into the blood. Proteins, broken down to amino acids, travels into the liver, into the blood, and such. So lipids are broken down into your monoglycerides, into your fatty acids. They're then absorbed into your lacteals, transported through the lymphatic system, and then dumped into that left subclavian vein, straight into your circulatory system. They will eventually go through the liver, but they'll go everywhere else too. So you need bile salts for the absorption of that. You have to have the bile salts. That helps out. Water, about 9 liters of water enters into the small intestine every day. You absorb almost all of that, some in the small intestine, some in the large, where only about 100 mils should be leaving through the feces, 100 to 200 and such. Water is only moved via osmosis. So you got to think about that with the sodium. Where sodium goes, water follows. Proteins, where proteins go, water follows. And also vitamins, we mentioned that. You have 2 big forms, fat and water soluble. Fat solubles are your ADEK, You need that. If you don't have fat in your diet, you're not going to absorb those. If you don't absorb vitamin D, no calcium absorption. You don't absorb vitamin K, no blood clotting such. Vitamin E, antioxidant, vitamin A, vision. Your water soluble, B's and C's. If you can absorb them, you can pass them out. So you have to take your B's and C's every day. And most of these are absorbed from simple diffusion, except for the B12. And the B12 is very important. I believe that's your folic acid. And that's where the intrinsic factor comes in. But there's something that we drink that inhibits the intrinsic factor, which prevents the absorption of B12, which messes us up figuring out. So, all right, there we go. We made it to the end.